The following journal has been recovered from the Hunters Guild archives. So, Isle City has asked us all to leave our homes. Sure, they're calling it a voluntary evacuation. They're saying that the Adobe district of Isle City has gotten too dangerous due to radon leaking in all the homes, but what do they really know? I bet they just want to take over these buildings the moment we leave. Besides, if it was really voluntary evacuation, then they wouldn't be asking everyone to leave. People would just leave if they wanted to. So, I met with my neighbors. Most of them were leaving. A couple of us are deciding to stay, those of us who've been here for years. Those who really live in Isle City are deciding to stay. So, we decided if it's a voluntary evacuation, then we just won't evacuate. Let them go deal with the overcrowding of the inner and outer cities. We will stay here in the beautiful Adobe district. Well, it's official. Today is where the Adobe district has now become the abandoned district. Even in official city announcements, we're now called the abandoned district. The power and water is still on, but there's no one left for us to pay for it. Apparently it was just cheaper for them to keep it flowing through here, so it's flowing through the other parts of the city. I don't really know. But it has been surreal walking through the streets that are completely empty. People really tried to get everything they could, but still quite a bit got left behind. The old local grocery store, they left too, but there's still plenty of non-perishable items left on the shelves, so, saves me a little extra money. And with most of my neighbors gone, I was able to go through their homes. Don't worry, I'm not a creep or anything. I didn't find all that much, but I did find some notes, paintings, stuff hanging on the walls. Quite a few of them left quite a bit of a mess behind, which is weird. They had a week to evacuate. You'd think they would have, done it better. So, I went deeper into the abandoned district today. Still haven't found anyone else who decided to stay, but that's okay. I'm okay being alone. And what I found deep within there is I found a truck marked with Madrigal Inc. So this definitely felt like a horror movie. Just in the middle of the street with nothing around was this giant truck marked with Madrigal Inc. Madrigal Inc., as everyone knows, sells quality tech, so whatever is inside is probably worth pawning, especially with the truck still sealed. So, after going through the driver's side door, I found some keys, and I managed to open up the back, and this is where things were weird. Inside the truck, I expected to find boxes upon boxes of unreleased tech or products that they were going to sell through Isle City, but instead there was just one chest in the middle of the truck. Sure, it was pretty large, looking like something from an old Pirates film, and it was chained there with chains that crisscrossed the entire truck. And the actual chest sat within a red square, which in itself sat within a larger yellow square that took up half the truck. Bizarre, but I figured whatever was there had to have been valuable. I mean, sending an entire truck just to carry one chest? Man, that must have cost so much. So maybe it was extremely valuable. So, taking the keys that I took from the driver's side, I unlocked the chains, one by one. There were 7 in total, so it didn't take too long, but it was a bit annoying with them crisscrossed everywhere. It was a lot like, I don't know, it's like some of those haunted houses, where they string lines all over the place, to make it hard for you to go through. So you have to crawl through and try to slide by without getting caught. It was a lot like that. But with all the chains undone finally, I could get a closer look at the chest. It was definitely large and old-fashioned. Quality made, back when they really made things out of wood. Out of wood. Back when they would chop down an entire tree just to make one table. It seemed that the entire chest was carved out of a single piece of wood. Now, I couldn't tell what it was, but judging by the slight red tint to it and the grain, they must have carved it out of redwood. On the front of the chest was an old iron lock. Now, none of the keys on the ring did fit it, so I figured they must have just, delivered the keys separate from the truck. Maybe ship the key by mail and ship the chest by truck. Still, whatever was inside definitely had to be valuable. On the front of the chest, just above the lock, was a strange little card that looked like it was actually buried into the wood, I guess. It was a white card, but it had the number XII, the Roman numeral 12, and the portrait it displayed was a man in a green shirt and orange pants, hanging from a tree from a single foot. The word on the card describing it was Le Pendu. I don't know what that means, but I don't really care. But with the lock on the chest being old and iron, I figured it would be good to take it back to my apartment. Maybe I could open it, or maybe I could just find out whatever was inside. Maybe I could even sell the chest separately to a pawn shop in the non-abandoned districts. Who knows? So it took a lot longer to actually get the chest back to my apartment than I expected. It was very heavy, and I don't have a car anymore, but that's a story for another time. But yeah, carrying the chest back to my apartment and setting it down, I went to work trying to get it open. Now obviously I'm not a locksmith, so I couldn't just pick the old iron lock, and even then I'm pretty sure like a locksmith couldn't work with a lock this old-fashioned. So I took what I could, a chisel and a hammer, and I tried breaking open that lock. Whatever kind of iron they used on that lock, it was very tough. Like, I kept trying to chisel at it, and the only thing I managed to succeed chiseling at was making my hands red, and I think I actually carved a few chips into the chisel, but I didn't even chip the lock, let alone cracked it open. So, after a while, I just decided to work on the wood instead. It was a little easier. I managed to get chips and pieces away from it. I even managed to dislodge the card that was put into it. Turns out it really was sunk into it. Whatever material it was made out of, it was white and smooth and felt a little pliable in my hands. Well, I can't say for certain. It seems to have been made out of ivory, so that would definitely be valuable to sell to the pawn shop. And now I could get a closer look at the actual portrait on the card. The Le Pendu, whatever that was, they carved that word out before they used black paint to fill in the little carving. And same thing with the portrait. The portrait was carved out of whatever substance this card was made of, and then paint was used to fill it in. And the face of the person was a lot more detailed than I expected. The eyes were squished and looked angry. The face was frowning, and there even appeared to be the neck even seemed to be elongating from the stress of being pulled upside down. Still, I figured it wouldn't be a complete loss one way or the other. So I kept trying to work on the wood for a couple more hours before I made it to a layer of metal. Whatever it was dark gray, and it felt kind of soft, and I managed to pierce it a little bit. So I could see that there's an inside to the case, but the only thing I could see inside was darkness. Even when I tried to take a flashlight, I only saw there was another layer of metal inside. So, deciding to take a break for the night and leaving the chest in my closet, I went to go take a shower. The shower felt nice. It was good, especially after such a long day. But with all of that done, I noticed that the chest that I put in my closet was now open. Well, sort of open. It was more like it bursted open. Running over to check the inside of the chest, I could see that the entire inside of it was coated with this strange silvery metal that seemed to be layered with gray metal. It didn't seem to have any distinctive smell, but I figured it must have been valuable, whatever they were holding inside, especially since it got out. And then I realized whatever was inside got itself out. Thinking that I activated maybe a drone or a robot, I tried checking around my closet, but I couldn't see anything. But then I heard a little chitter. So, trying to follow the noise, I kept looking around my closet, hearing the chittering, but I couldn't figure out where it was coming from until I decided to look up. Looking up, I could see a head hanging upside down. My first thought when seeing this was someone trying to tunnel into my house through my roof? But something was wrong with this head. The head looked cold, clammy, and heavily wrinkled, like it spent a few days out in a rainstorm. It was bald, no hair on its head whatsoever, and the eyes did not look right. The pupils were yellow and rectangular, with a red sclera, and the iris was green. The mouth was closed and full of frown lines. It actually closely resembled the figure on the Pendu card. But when I tried to follow the neck to where the body was, I screamed. There was no neck. There was something attached to the head, but I wouldn't call it a neck. It closely resembled a vertebra, but it was red and slimy looking, like it was an exposed muscle. Even staring at it, I could see it pulsing while it stared back at me. And this vertebra led to another vertebra that was even larger and longer, and then to yet another, and then yet another, each of them longer and wider than the last, until they led into long, thin legs that clung to the ceiling, like the legs of a centipede. When I screamed, the head, Pendu, opened its mouth, and I could see rows upon rows of needle-like teeth, all black and broken, like it spent centuries without ever brushing its teeth or even seeing a dentist. And while I screamed, unsure what to do, it lunged at me, its dirty teeth digging into my cheek, and its leg and body digging into my neck and face. So I grabbed at it, trying to get it to unwind and let me go. I kept screaming and crashing into my walls. But after a few tries, I finally got smart and banged my head against a wall, Pendu between me and the wall. This caused it to loosen and let go of me. Well, while it sat on the floor, stunned, I ran towards my living room, closing the bedroom door behind me and pushing my bookshelf in front of it so it couldn't get out. And now out of the scuffle, I thought for a moment. There was no windows and there was no way out of my bedroom other than my living room. So, while it banged away at my door, I took a rag and some water, and I tried cleaning my face and neck wounds. They all bled a lot, but it didn't seem like it would be that bad. They weren't too deep, but if I didn't treat it, I would get an infection. But my bathroom was connected to my bedroom, and I was in the living room, so I couldn't access that. So I tried calling the Vanguard. I was certain they would help me, regardless of where I was. But then I was told they didn't service the abandoned district. So I tried to call the police, but they also don't service the abandoned district. I even tried animal control, a taxi service to try to get me to a hospital, and finally the local church. But they all didn't service the abandoned district that I live in. If I knew that being in a condemned district meant that I wasn't going to get any services, maybe I would have considered moving out with everyone else. But I did manage to get something from the church. When I tried explaining my situation to the local priest at the church, he gave me a phone number to call, saying that maybe they would be able to help. So I tried calling that number with no other leads, and when I called that number, the woman on the other hand simply said, "Hello?" And in desperation, I tried to explain everything that happened and where I was. It felt like I was talking for hours, but I'm sure it was just a few minutes. And in that desperation, I tried to explain everything, and the woman just listened. She didn't ask questions, she didn't demean me, she didn't make fun of me, she didn't mock me, she just listened. And then finally, after explaining everything, the woman said they would send someone who would be there in an hour. Finally, in relief, I collapsed on the floor and started writing all of this in my journal, just to get some foresight on all of this. When I realized that I had help, I felt how tired I really was, and I also became aware of Pendu trying to dig through the door. But I am hopeful help will get here before it breaks through both the door and the bookshelf. This journal was found in a ransacked house in the abandoned district of Isle City by Sochi of the Hunters Guild. Neither the author nor the monster called Pendu were found. The blood-covered apartment recovered no bodies, but both the chest and the tarot card mentioned were recovered. The metal in the chest was discovered to be lead plating. The search for Pendu and the author continues to this day. Thank you so much for listening. You have a good rest of your day.